Hi, welcome to this episode of The Daily. My name is Brendan Malone. Well, one of the consistent complaints that we heard during the Brexit debate from the Leave campaign was that the media was now effectively in bed with the establishment, and they were working hard to promote a whole lot of misinformation and propaganda to try and trick the British people into voting Remain instead of leaving the EU. Now, this sort of complaint is not uncommon, and I took it with a pinch of salt. Whenever there's political issues on the table, you always get politicians on both sides claiming that the media is working against their position. They do this because it helps them to try and avoid the hard questions, and it sows doubt in the minds of the listeners. If they can convince you that this media person who is asking genuinely important questions is actually a secret agent from the other side, then you're going to put less stock in those hard questions, and you're going to give that politician more of a break when he doesn't provide reliable answers. So it's a common tactic. However, watching the British media in the subsequent wake of the actual vote, I'm now really starting to wonder whether or not the Leave campaign was actually telling the truth in what they were saying. Let me give you some really clear and very glaring examples of what I mean. This particular story was published by the UK Huffington Post. Sky News political editor Faisal Islam has been left speechless. You've got to love that hyperbole. He's been left speechless. The shock of it shocked him to his very core. He's been left speechless after claiming a Conservative pro-Brexit MP told him the Leave campaign didn't have a plan for Brexit and Number 10 should have had one. And they go on from there claiming that this shows that the British people have been duped. You know, they were fooled into voting for something that was nothing more than some sort of silly fool's errand with no real plan involved. This is so dishonest. It is just not funny how dishonest this particular piece of reporting actually is. You see, if these journalists knew anything, or they were doing their job, or they are not actually engaged in propaganda here, then they would know, and they would tell the people in this article that how this whole thing works is that when you want to exit the EU, you have to trigger a particular clause in the EU constitution. And once that clause is triggered by the country that wants to depart, 2 years of exit negotiations start at that point. So you don't just leave cold. And there's no point in having a plan for what you want to happen, because those 2 years of negotiations are how you exit, and that's how the exit is formulated and takes shape, and that's how your future direction starts to unfold. And the Brexit MP is exactly right. It is up to the Prime Minister and to the ruling parties, or the ruling party, to actually have the plan in place for what happens now, because the referendum is an extension of their government. Right, it takes place on their watch. So they should have a plan for what happens if the vote was stay. They should have another plan for what happens if the vote was leave. Right? So they're absolutely right. There is no story here, but this is deliberately being stirred up as if there is some sort of genuine controversy here, and the UK people have all been fooled and tricked. A second example that was even more absurd than that was the Independent newspaper. And what the Independent newspaper did was they republished as a story an anonymous comment that someone had posted, a conspiracy theory that was posted by an anonymous commenter on the bottom of a comment thread on another newspaper article. They took the comment from an anonymous commenter, which was a conspiracy theory about, David Cameron's resignation. Did it mean that we were still going to stay in the EU and the will of the people was going to be overridden by this manoeuvre? Had he done this on purpose? Several paragraphs dedicated to this conspiracy theory. The Independent took this and ran it, republished it, rewrote the whole thing out, typed that as an article. No expert analysis, no other interviews, just that conspiracy theory. For all they know, that anonymous comment could have been written by some 16-year-old sitting in his undies in his mum's basement in Australia. They've got no idea at all. And the last example was this whole referendum petition, this online petition that someone started to try and force a second referendum because they didn't like the outcome of the first one. And anyone could go and sign this petition to try and bring about a new referendum. And BBC and Sky News in the UK were reporting that this thing had millions of supporters and this was gaining traction. They kept reporting on it over and over again. They clearly hadn't done any due diligence, because if they had, they would have gone to the website like I did, and they would have discovered that you don't even need to be from the UK to actually sign this petition. Not only that, but there is a very comprehensive report on the internet now, which is backed up by some pretty solid evidence, which indicates that this petition was pranked by a group of hackers known as 4chan. And what they did was they created automated bots that signed up lots and lots and lots of fake names to this petition very quickly. So, for example, 50,000 signatories came from the Vatican City. Several thousand came from North Korea. Now, I'm no expert in the UK or European affairs, but I'm pretty confident that North Korea is not part of the United Kingdom. And I'm pretty confident that North Korea doesn't have several thousand legitimate UK voters residing there. Yet the media kept reporting on this thing as if it was legitimate. Now, either way, whether this is deliberate propagandising, so the media has joined the establishment to try and propagandise one particular view, or whether this is just ineptitude on the part of the media, they're not fact-checking anymore, they're just throwing stuff out there for the sake of links and clicks, it's a problem, because in this case it really shows how serious the problem is. It completely undermines democracy because people rely on the media to actually, or they should be able to rely on the media to give them accurate information to help inform their vote. But what this shows is you can't do that anymore. And that's really, really problematic, regardless of whether it's deliberate or just ineptitude. In that situation, all I can say is thank goodness for the internet, which, by the way, is not perfect and doesn't mean you're going to get reliable information, but at least there is now another way for people who are motivated and who care about democracy to go to another source and investigate for themselves and try and find out a much broader range of views and to get more information about important issues taking place in their country. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily.